Sometimes a person loves a food very much, but then their body develops an allergy to the food, so they cannot eat it any longer. Is it possible to develop an allergy to certain types of spiritual practice?
I wouldn't think so. I would think it might be possible to get tired of the taste, which happens with food, but I wouldn't think an allergy.
Yeah, allergy is just not quite the right word. I mean, I realize it's by analogy, but
yeah,
you might find that a practice is no longer useful or meaningful.
Yeah.
To you, and just abandon it.
Yeah, but an allergy is like a bad reaction, a negative reaction.
More than,
and there's no point, if that happens for a spiritual practice, regardless of whether it's useful to you or not, it's time to look at yourself and see why you're reacting so strongly against it.
There's several things that might be the cause of a problem like that. Either you've got an ingrained ideas that you can't overcome that are incompatible with what you're trying to do, or you have settled yourself someplace where you don't really belong.
Well, that can be, but usually you wouldn't have eaten it regularly and then suddenly couldn't stand it.
Are you talking about the food or the practice?
Yes, the food or the practice. That's an inclusive or.
Maybe it's not a matter of liking or not liking. Maybe you've settled yourself somewhere and you still like it quite a lot. Maybe you have nostalgia about all the ways that it's helped you, but maybe, it's no longer efficacious, or maybe, for whatever reason, continuing down a certain path is breeding inborn toxicity, emotional, spiritual, whatever, for whatever reason. And then in that case, I would say the best thing to do is maybe change it up a bit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in that case. But, it sounds like in the first way you put it, it might be a case of attributing things to the practice such that you thought it was doing something for you all along, and all of a sudden it didn't feel like it was doing it for you anymore. But you may have mischaracterized that in the beginning. In other words, if you were too identified with it and it made you feel holy, and then after a while you realized you didn't feel so holy, and it was a disappointment now rather than an inspiration. I don't know. It's just sometimes it is our relationship to things that make the difference.
Yeah, sometimes I think one of the problems is that we take it too seriously. So that when things are good, we're like, yeah, we love this religion, I love this path. And when it's bad, damn this religion, it's destroying me. But, I think sometimes it's better to have a more relaxed attitude. For instance,
it's ourselves that we take too seriously.
Right. I'm reminded of this period in the late 50s or early 60s that Ezra Pound was in a Catholic hospital in Italy, and one of the nuns asked him what religion he is, and he said, "Oh, I'm a Confucian." And the nun said, "Oh, it doesn't matter. They're all one anyway."
Yeah, there are people in the church who know that.
There really are, and I feel like there were more that knew that back in the day. We tend to focus a lot on things like the Inquisition and whatnot, but that's actually post-Renaissance, and by the time that stuff was happening, you already had, a lot of the modern reactions and the beginnings of rationalism and industry and everything else. But if you look back to the medieval period, the so-called Dark Ages, actually a lot of the major philosophers, theologians, and mystics from that period, and I'm not just talking about major ones like Meister Eckhart, but much more minor, theologians, actually really did believe in the, what we would call the transcendent unity of religions.
Yeah. And, if you look at, even if you look at our founding fathers, as they're called, I don't know why there weren't any mothers, but actually I do. They were, some were Christians, some were deists. They were careful in how they referred to it. Endowed by our Creator. Well, that doesn't indicate any particular religion. It may tend to leave out Buddhism, but they probably didn't know much about that.
In reference to your statement about the Middle Ages, Ananda Kumaraswamy wrote, and I imagine you've heard it, the Dark Ages become increasingly dark in proportion to modern man's ignorance.
Yeah, they weren't as dark as we tend to think they were.
Right.
They weren't paradise, but they weren't hell either.
But, a lot of it is, how much discernment we're willing to exercise, and what our particular position is in life. For instance, it's easy to watch a couple of Hollywood movies or, go with the standard ideas of things and say, well, the Dark Ages were a horrible time and place and all of that. But think about how horrible it is for, poor people living near some of these oil refineries in Louisiana. They're already in the inferno, right here, right now.
Yeah, well, it's always been the case, whether it was the Dark Ages or what they call the Enlightenment, that the people on the edge of society had a hard time. It's really mostly the upper class who defined these ages.
Educated scholars and so forth.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that, for instance, in the Dark Ages, the viewpoint was still pretty much traditional.
Yeah.
That was imposed from the top, but it was something that was generally understood by most people who lived then.
Right. Well, even today, the common people are rather simple and not full of guile and things like that.
Right.
But somebody told them they could understand everything, and now we're in trouble. It's that thing of being willing to find out you're wrong. And some people are just too uncomfortable if they don't have the stability of having fixed beliefs. And I have sympathy for them, and I don't see any reason to rock their boat.
But fixed beliefs are part of the problem. Fixed beliefs are a bit of a drug, and they can only help like a drug for so long, and then a person stop getting the same high from those beliefs, and they either leave or they just need to go deeper and deeper into those views. I think it's a thoroughly Western phenomenon that, not Western as in traditionally Western, but, Judeo-Christian Islamic, that we tend to believe in set beliefs that come straight from a book. None of the other ancient religions had that notion that, there's this fixed text that had to dictate to someone whether they had right belief or wrong belief. I believe that belief, and truth is much more of a gray area than it's made out to be, that it's a spectrum and that it's a moving target. You can never really put your finger on the truth, but the best you can do is try to ascertain it and, go to nature and go to the poets who have had a particular gift for, at moments in their lives apprehending the truth. And that's really what those scriptures are. Muhammad or Jesus or some of the Old Testament prophets, they had a particular gift for seeing the truth at a particular moment in time, but they're not timeless representations of some fixed notion of the truth, because
not literally anyway.
Right. To say that the truth is something that we can write down in a book and that is itself, I think, one of the greatest heresies.
Well, there are quite a lot of people who do not want the responsibility of discernment. And, they feel like they need handholds in their lives. And if you're that way, I mean, as I say, I don't hate people like that or anything, but they're not open, because letting go of the one handle in order to grab onto the next is too scary while they float between them.
There's the corollary to that, though, of the people who think they are discerning but aren't.
Well, yeah.
So there needs to be, you might say, some happy medium that keeps the ones from leaping overboard who think they have discernment and don't, and also to keep those that don't have discernment open to some things of those that are brought to them by those who are discerning.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the problem comes when people actually believe that the belief is their belief. And if someone would threaten it, it's like they're taking something away from them, something that they base their identity on. And they'll fight for all their lives to hold on to that belief, if they're really attached to it.
One of the problems of some of the Western traditions was a lack of the sense of Maya.
Yeah, and the acceptance of relativity on its own level, and not, finding your sense of the absolute on the first thing that somebody teaches you. Right. But if your eternal salvation depends on this book, then it's scary to realize that maybe you got something wrong about the book.
Well, if you understand the book,
good. Well, that's the problem
to you.
Yeah, there's a big difference between
problem with somebody who is taking passages in rote form and not really understanding them.
Well, yeah.
Applying them wrongly.
Well, yeah, there are a lot of people who think that they understand that this is the word of God, and that's all they need to understand. And that's really on the level of belief, not understanding, but they don't know that.
But they haven't read very far if they didn't, using that attitude, run into all manner of contradictions.
Well, people are remarkably nimble at handling contradictions. They just partition their mind up into little, pockets, and this one belongs there and that one belongs here, to try to minimize.
It can't be very well. That is not an option to its understanding. But anyway.
No, exactly. It's against understanding. But some people want to understand, and some people just want to know, tell me what the right answer is.
They want a recipe book.
That's right. There are two, these are two fundamental human types, and it's natural for them to exist. It's just that you have to recognize that there's a difference, and one isn't good and one's bad. But if you want to understand something, there's only one type to go to.
Well, I think there's some basis for the caste system that
there is
breaks people up into more than just two categories. But
yeah, where you draw the lines may be a little arbitrary.
Yeah.
But there's introvert and extrovert. Polarity is in the nature of creation. So you can always say there's two kinds of people and draw the line somewhere.
That kind, yeah.
But if you want to get beyond that, you can draw a cross,
Yeah. I was somewhat anxious to go on to the next question. It's
all right.
It engaged me, if we could. Shall it be read officially, or?
Yes. Let's hear.
Okay. All right. Can a person in a spiritual path be a patriot, or does patriotism and nationalism conflict with spiritual values?
That's a difficult one. I was thinking, you know, we've just come off of July 4th, and I watched the program on PBS that shows both the concert and then the fireworks on the National Mall. And I've been to that personally over the years quite a few times, but there is something a little tricky about that. Patriotism seems like in many ways a good thing. You know, it's the sense of being a part of your community and defined in the broadest terms, on national terms. But there are certainly some aspects of it that are pernicious, and so it's a good thing and a bad thing.
Right.
Both.
You know, patriotism is one of those things that can be very logical. You know, your country provides so much for you, assuming it's not crumbling, and ours is set up on certain principles that can be appreciated and defended. Whether you defend that verbally or with a gun, that depends on the circumstances. But when it becomes a religion, you know, that mixture of God and country, and that feeling that by being a patriot, you're special in some way, that's where we get into trouble. I mean, I love my country, but I love God more.
Well, it seems to me that there's a difference between might in the service of right and might because of some sense of patriotism.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And the rightness of your country is the best reason to love it.
Right.
And it, you know, that thing that I remember from the 60s, I don't know who said it, but it's infamous or famous, depending. My country, right or wrong, but by God, my country. And I don't remember, you know, who was supposed to have said that, but it struck me as particularly dangerous when I first heard it. And that was a long time ago.
I remember watching this program on TV, My Capital Fourth is what they call it, but
yeah,
someone sang I think it's the Woody Guthrie lead singer song, "This Land Is My Land," from the New York Highland to this. And I thought, well, I wonder what Native Americans, how they respond to that. Does it make them feel patriotic or resentful or angry, or what is it?
Yeah, it's a song about belonging. It shouldn't be a song about possessing.
Yeah,
it's a nice song.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And maybe they're Native Americans who can join up and say, yes, you know,
they might think they're the only ones that had the right to sing it.
Yeah, I mean, we were singing it before anybody else, but now that all these other people were here, well, fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of them we didn't like what they did, but full of people.
Yeah, I would expect a Native American to be completely justified in standing up and saying, "What do you mean, my land? What do you mean, we white man?"
Well, of course, there have been several layers of Indians that you might say didn't agree with each other over the migrations that occurred. Yeah. So they can't really even say it's my land. It might have been the Anasazi's land.
Oh, well. Yeah, but now that they recognize they have something in common as Native Americans, I think it's justified in saying it's my land.
Well, the Navajo and who are the others that they divided that land up between? And
Hopi and Apaches.
Yes, they don't view each other with that kind of magnanimity in many cases.
They probably do more today than they used to because they have a common enemy.
Because it's politically astute to do so on their part, I guess.
Well, and you know, if you look around and you realize the person that you have most in common with is from another tribe, you know.
Well, the Crows and the what are the ones, the Dakotas and the Lakotas, they haven't gotten along for a long time.
Well, I know, but I bet they feel like they have more in common with each other in the context of being overrun by the white men.
That may be true until it comes to some point where they're arguing with each other about
Yeah, on the small scale.
And then they may take viewpoints that are Anglo.
Well, but they may see. In some cases, they'll see the other. In some cases, they'll see the same.
Yeah.
And we're all kind of like that, but I think they've been forced into a position where,
There have been a lot of news stories in the last few years about both the Canadians and Americans, and I think even Australians, who set up these schools.
Oh yeah.
Back in the 1800s and early 1900s, and they took children from their parents and brought them in, and they really wanted to wipe out any vestiges of the Native American culture. They wanted to assimilate them, like, you know, we take sort of pride in being a melting pot where people, different cultures and races and ethnic backgrounds get melded into this one great American patriotic country, but it has, it can have its very negative aspects.
Yeah, that melting pot notion has not served us well, because it's like saying we have a colorblind society. You know, it just doesn't, you can't just declare it and have it be so.
It should be, but
yeah.
That works up until the point that we discovered we've given them something by treaty that has value and we would like it back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the Indians have actually won some court cases, and bravo for that. But yeah, we lied to them and stole all the way through. And unfortunately, we have this expression, don't be an Indian giver.
Right.
When
don't be a white man taker. I guess
exactly. You know, all this stuff. Oh yes, you know, as long as the rivers run and the sky is blue, you will have this land forever. And you know, what? Gold?
Maybe now a lot of it they just try to buy. You know, you can buy up. And take it, in effect, take it away from the
But you know, I don't think originally they even thought land ownership had any meaning. And we came along and tricked them, you know, as they say, buying Manhattan Island for $23 worth of beads or something like that. You can be sure the Indians were laughing at us,
you think they
you know, and running off with the beads and saying, ha.
They didn't understand the English property law well enough to realize how.
I mean, the idea that you could sell land was just inconceivable. Own and sell. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we could be patriotic. You know, even some Native Americans can be patriotic because it is where they live, but they can't be blind. They can't be blind to what happened. What?
They fought in the wars.
Yeah, exactly.
They joined in as patriots.
Yeah.
But I remember after 9/11, my brother was living across the street with me on Capitol Hill, and we would sometimes take trips on Saturdays, just drive out countryside. There was one trip we drove out toward the Appalachian Mountains and saw a few things and came back, but we were listening to the radio a lot, and it was just one patriotic song after another, and that was going on for days and days after 9/11. And I remember thinking, you know, we're just engaging in like an orgy of patriotism that it seemed like it's a little too far. It was overboard.
Things now just affirm too much. It's like, oh, we lost our security and we have to keep reaffirming it, kind of thing. Or that it's an incantation that's going to keep those crazy jihadists away. But it really is just convincing ourselves of something.
it makes us feel better about our dislike of them.
Yeah, yeah, and it comforts us when we feel that danger has, that we're facing danger.
I mean, if you look around at the different peoples, like the Russians or the Ukrainians or the what have you, they usually justify their activities by the building up of some external threat.
Yeah. If you want conquest, you need to create a threat. If you want to go to war, you need an enemy. And we all have enemies, and that's one of the problems. When we find ourselves against something, it's time to take care and make sure you haven't just made somebody into an enemy. They may be wrong, or you may be wrong. If you disagree, you don't still,
the bigger the threat you can build, the more easily manipulable are the people who you can convince of
that's
being
right. That's right. Yeah. There's a documentary I heard. Well, anyway, it's kind of a documentary called El Dorado that I heard about, but it's on Netflix, and I don't get Netflix, and I'm not going to subscribe just to watch one thing. But it's really about how things began to shift, and as the Germans became more Nazi, and how they basically defined enemies to unite against. And I think it started with the gay people, but I haven't seen it, so I don't know for sure. But apparently people that have seen it have been talking about it a lot, and it sounds really good.
What's the name? Is it a series?
No, it's a single production. It's called El Dorado. And I don't know much about it other than that it deals with that, and it deals with it well.
And is it on YouTube or in the theaters?
It's on Netflix.
Oh, it's on Netflix.
Streaming.
Thank you.
Yeah, the streaming.
So if you don't have a subscription, you can't see it. It's really a shame. There's a lot of stuff being produced that is siloed behind a paywall, and a lot of it is very beneficial. It could be spiritual, it could be just educational, could be deeply moving for some reason. And the creators want to make something that is really worth watching, but they have to do it for a business that wants to restrict it. It's very frustrating. I hear about things all the time that oh, well, they're going to do this special documentary. It's going to be on Netflix. It's going to be on Showtime. It's going to be.
I don't view that as quite a barrier. I think about back in the old days, we used to go to movies. Before COVID, and you'd pay $10 each for a ticket to see a movie. So you can go to Netflix and subscribe for a month for $10 and watch that movie and
then cancel. Yeah, you can do
several
that.
others. So you can.
That's a lot of trouble.
Well, it's still easier than.
I like to go there so I can watch Zatoichi, the Blind Swordsman.
Well, yeah, they've got stuff you might want to watch, but when they do what they think is an important work and they silo it on a channel that you have to pay to watch. I mean, if they want to send it,
because they have to make money.
I know they do, but the movie companies made money too, but anybody could buy a ticket. You didn't have to subscribe.
Well, there's a couple of reasons, One,
there are a lot of reasons.
You produce things is so that you can mold opinion, and which you expect to gain out of over the long term. Then there's the other, that you want to make money out of the productions, and you have to produce something that will be appealing to the crowd at this particular point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but if it's considered a good work, either because it's great art or because it's great information, it's like, you know, holding a copyright on it forever. In which case, you know, you really didn't do it for the common good. I mean, I understand you've got to support the system that allows you to make it, but I don't know. I think, you know, Netflix and people like that, once the rate of people watching it drops below a certain amount, I think they should open it up.
I think services like Netflix, television, movies, etc., shouldn't exist. I think people should read a book.
Well, we might be better, but you know, the same thing you know, happened with the printing press that happened with media, is that a lot of it got filled up with stuff that might earn a little bit of money but had no intrinsic worth. Once the printing was so cheap, you know, you had a lot of pulp fiction and stuff that might be a little bit entertaining, but
you know, even if you look at some of the pulp fiction of the 1920s, it's not that bad.
No, I mean, it isn't.
It really isn't. But the stuff people are doing today is actually horrible. There's some woman from Texas that decided to publish a series of self-published ebooks through Amazon about some woman who travels back in time and has erotic relations with dinosaurs, and she was selling each of these for $1 a piece, and she's become like a multi-millionaire now.
Yeah, for $1 people can pay it just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I no longer, I don't subscribe to Netflix any longer, because I saw it seemed like to me it was getting further and further and further afield as to what I could tolerate. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's not just Netflix; it really is the industry. But
yes.
But you know, if there's only a few things that you'd like to watch, it just subscription is criminal.
Oh, Larry.
I want to buy a viewing of a program or a movie or whatever. You know, I don't want to get in bed with the company that distributes it.
Well, you can do that on Amazon.
What?
A lot of them, you can just pick out a movie and pay to see it. But
oh yeah. And that's the way I think if Netflix instituted a pay-per-view thing, I wouldn't be bad-mouthing them.
Be bad-mouthing it. So I
like some of the British productions, Downton Abbey, and just to get an idea of what people lived like at that time and at that status. And some of the mysteries are good. I even like Hercule Poirot.
Yeah, yeah, I can appreciate it.
Yes, and Sherlock Holmes, but. They did some good productions of those. Yeah.
Well, you have to remember the BBC, of course, is taxpayer supported. So the television stuff they do, they don't charge you extra for. But I don't mind paying for something like buying a ticket to a movie. It's just that something comes out and you say, oh, I'm not a subscriber. Oh, well, yeah, I could subscribe, but I have to remember to unsubscribe before they start, I mean, really.
Not a big amount for the subscription.
It's not?
It's not.
It's paying per month for something you may not watch for months at a time.
Well, most of those things I get to see for free some way or another. I don't know. Maybe they have pay-for channels, but
there are a lot of streaming channels that just show ads if you want to watch ads.
Yeah, well, and if you want to get on the peer-to-peer file sharing thing, you can find almost anything.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
There's another issue that, back in the day, if you actually wanted to watch something serious, like an important documentary or a film, you didn't actually have to pay anything. You could just be a member of a public library or an academic library and just take the DVD or VHS out. But now that everything is online, you can't actually do that anymore. They expect everyone to be part of a service.
There are some libraries that have some kind of system set up where theoretically they are loaning it because they have a license for like 100 of them, and they only let 100 people have it, borrow it at one time or something like that. And the money comes from public funds for the library, and that's a good idea.
Well, I used to like Netflix when you ordered a DVD and played it,
and they mailed it to you.
Yeah.
Yes, I could find all sorts of old movies and various different things that I really enjoyed. But now you have to take what their programming gives you.
Yeah. Well, their archives still may include a lot of those things that they used to send on discs.
I haven't been able to find them.
Really? Maybe they sold it to Amazon Prime.
I think maybe also there, even in terms of books, maybe there should be a 20-year moratorium on new publishing ventures. I mean, there's so many good old things out there that, are just lying, dust-filled and unknown. For instance, I just recently started reading this text called what is it exactly? The Ancient Naki Kingdom of Southwest China by Joseph Rock. And it's What's that?
Did you say ancient Nazi?
No. Nahi, N-A-K-H-I.
Nahi. All right.
Yeah, I think now, this book was published in the 1940s. I think now with the modern transcription, it would be N-A-X-I. But it's this ethnic group in China that, had its own very, very unique religion and religious set of rituals and beliefs and whatnot. And later on, there was some Taoism and Confucianism coming in, but it's actually, if anything, more closely related to the Tibetan Bon religion. And it's just extremely fascinating. And it was written in a time and day when anthropologists, and by the way, the guy who wrote it wasn't even an anthropologist. He was a botanist. He was a botanist who was studying Chinese flowers and was so taken by this Nahi tribe that he wrote a 1,000-page ethnological study on them that, unlike, text today where you can't even get through 50 pages without banging your head on the wall, it's actually a joy to read. And I wonder why scholars today can't write that way. If you read any modern scholarly text, it's like ChatGPT wrote it before ChatGPT even came into existence. It's like, this text is written in this way, and in chapter 1 I'll do this, and in chapter 2 I'll do this.
That's
and
right.
It's like 80 pages of the driest, most atrocive, perhaps grammatically correct, but typo-ridden drivel that you could imagine, followed by 300 pages of footnotes. Whereas these old scholarly texts are actually sometimes amazing. I mean, or look to like Edward Gibbon's 6 volumes, Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. I mean, that's a history book that could teach anybody how to write good English. Really a marvel of good English. And it's just absurd that, we just constantly are publishing more and more and more. And it seems as the days go by, it becomes worse and worse in terms of grammar, language, vocabulary, and ultimately meaning as well.
Well, long before Chat GPT came
You
out,
read
there
any
was,
of the books by Robert Van Gulik, the Chinese murder mysteries?
mm-mm.
I find them quite good. And they were written by a man who was the emissary of the Netherlands government to the Chinese government during the Chinese Revolution.
You mean the Communist Revolution?
He also he wrote the novels in Japanese and in Chinese.
Wow.
And then he was also, he knew a couple of the American Indian languages, and he knew Sanskrit. But it gives you a clue. It's about, the main character is a Judge D who lived in the 900s or maybe earlier than that. I'm not sure. And he was a magistrate, and it gives you a clue as to the way the Chinese governance was at that time.
Yeah.
And how all of the different levels of the society came down from the emperor, and it was the emperor's job to make the country or the people conform to the will of heaven.
Yes.
The author's name again?
So it's very much Confucian based, but it has also some of Buddhism and some of Taoism, and it has some of the conflicts between the two or the three in their viewpoints, but also the fact that people could be a part of all three at once in a way.
Well, if the emperor's job is to maintain harmony, that serves everybody.
Yeah, that's right. But it's from the legal point of view.
And what was the author's name again?
The emperor would allow, of course, spiritual paths, people to have spiritual paths, but he would not be the instigator of a spiritual path.
Right. Yeah, he rules the country, the land,
yes.
It's, I don't know if it thinks of it as his, but he wants it to run well if he's a good leader.
Something about Chinese jurisprudence of that age. Judge D was an actual real person, and there are literally thousands of books written about Judge D in Chinese and Japanese, but they don't conform to what is a murder mystery's good taste would be to a Westerner. I mean, they don't, they have a lot of the supernatural involved and things like that, which people over here wouldn't want in their murder mystery. They wouldn't want the murder mystery to be solved by a magistrate who had a vision of some ancient character who told him who the murderer was. And another thing, the Chinese murder mysteries, they always end up in a very detailed depiction of the punishment of the person who is found guilty. And that's because they want to see justice acted out.
Yeah.
Their view of a proper ending of a mystery. So Van Gulik took the Chinese attitude to some extent about Judge D and what Judge D's purpose was and how he accomplished what he accomplished, and he wrote it, but he made it a little more palatable to the Western taste.